5:19 local time. Inside the Combat Information Center, the screens cast a low blue glow. Range rings tighten, course lines update in silence. No one raises their voice. They do not need to. 3 surface contacts unidentified, speed increasing. The report is calm, clipped, professional. On the bridge, the officer of the deck shifts his stance and looks ahead, not toward the horizon, but at the repeater mounted below the windows. The numbers tell the story faster than human eyes ever could. Distance is dropping, angles are narrowing. Closest point of approach updates again. Below deck, steel doors open and close as watchstanders move with purpose. Not rushed, not slow, just practiced. Boots strike the deck plates. Headsets settle into place. Every motion comes from repetition earned over years. Readiness changes without drama. No alarms, no theatrics, just a ship quietly moving into a sharper posture. The destroyer holds course. That matters. Out on the water, the 3 contacts are still officially unknown. No AIS. No friendly response to bridge calls. But with every mile, their outlines become clearer. Hull length, superstructure spacing, radar signatures that do not match fishing boats or merchant traffic. This is not random traffic. This is deliberate approach behavior. CPA drops below 5 nautical miles and keeps falling. Another log entry. Another calm confirmation that time is now part of the equation. The captain steps forward on the bridge. He does not touch the console. He does not speak right away. He watches the same numbers everyone else is watching, letting the situation explain itself before anyone adds meaning to it. The ship does not change speed. That matters too. The sea stays calm. The geometry does not. One contact slides into a parallel track off the starboard quarter. The other 2 angle inward. Not openly aggressive, not yet, but enough to tighten the picture. Enough to force updates every few seconds instead of every few minutes. This is where incidents begin or get prevented. Contacts remain unresponsive to hails. The words land flat because they do not need emotion attached to them. Long-range optics come alive. Lenses adjust automatically, feeding steady imagery back into the ship's system. White wakes carve sharp lines across the water. Even at a distance, the discipline is obvious. No wandering helms, no uncertainty. These ships know exactly where they are going. In CIC, an analyst leans closer to his display, matching silhouettes against memory. Twin masts, angular forward sections, shapes that stop looking ambiguous once you have seen enough of them, likely military surface combatants. Likely becomes probable. Probable is enough. The bridge acknowledges, nothing else changes. That is the point. A junior watchstander glances at the captain, then back to the display. The captain's hands rest easily at his sides. His posture does not signal alarm, it signals control. That message carries farther than any radio transmission. Outside, the range drops again, 4 nautical miles, then 3.8. The ship's 5-inch mount shifts a few degrees. Not to threaten, not to provoke, just enough to be noticed. Most people would miss it. Anyone trained to read a warship would not. On the Chinese bridges, someone sees it. They have to. Still, no one acts rashly. No one escalates. Not yet. Contacts now visually identified. There is a brief pause before the next line. 3 Chinese warships. No one reacts outwardly. There is nothing to gain from it. Nationality answers one question, but it does not change the math. The math still says they are close. Too close. One of the 3 picks up speed by a few knots. Not enough to look dramatic. Just enough to test. The captain finally speaks. Maintain course. Log everything. That is all. No challenge, no ego, just instruction. The ship keeps moving, a steady gray line through blue water. Systems are active, people are focused, restraint remains intact. Every sensor records, every second is time-stamped. Every maneuver, ours and theirs, becomes evidence. For a moment, the range stops shrinking, then it shrinks again. Out here, nothing is loud, nothing flashes, nothing becomes a headline in real time, but 3 warships have closed to a distance where mistakes stop being theoretical, and everyone on board knows the next few minutes will decide whether this remains a professional encounter or turns into something far more serious. 5:23 local time. The range closes in increments small enough to look harmless and large enough to matter. Numbers update, then update again. Each change tightens the geometry between steel hulls moving with purpose. One of the Chinese warships settles into a near-parallel course off the starboard side, matching speed with precision. There is no doubt now. This is not drift. This is station keeping. The other 2 do something different. They continue angling inward, not sharply enough to justify panic, not openly enough to trigger theatrics, just enough to force constant recalculation, the kind of movement that lives in the gray zone between routine shadowing and unsafe maneuvering. Inside CIC, the closest point of approach redraws itself again and again. CPA is now under 3 nautical miles. Acknowledged. Logged. The officer of the deck makes a small rudder correction, not to evade, but to hold a steady track under pressure. The ship's wake straightens behind her like a ruler laid across the sea. Another bridge-to-bridge call goes out. Professional tone, standard language. No accusations, no posturing, silence answers. That silence is information. Long-range cameras sharpen further. Hull numbers become visible. Movement on deck comes into focus through stabilized optics. Sailors can be seen topside, helmets on, hands resting in the places. Hands rest when everyone knows they are being watched closely. No one is acting openly provocative. That matters too. Contact 2, adjusting course 2 degrees to port. A tiny move. Hardly visible with the naked eye. On radar, unmistakable. That small shift tightens the space even more. Time to CPA shortens by seconds. Seconds matter. On the bridge, no one speaks unless necessary. The captain watches the same display as the rest of the team. He does not interrupt. He does not lean over anyone's shoulder. He lets the process work. This is what real discipline looks like. The parallel ship holds station with unnerving consistency. Its bow wave mirrors the American destroyers almost exactly. A steel shadow running alongside at a distance just wide enough to claim safety and just narrow enough to apply pressure. That ship is the anchor, the other 2 are the squeeze. The nearest Chinese warship adds another 2 knots. Nothing dramatic, just enough to send a message. Just enough to see whether the American ship will react. She does not. Course steady, speed unchanged. The ship's systems continue recording everything. Radar tracks, video feeds, timestamps precise to the second. Every choice made now becomes future evidence, whether the wider world ever sees it or not. In CIC, an analyst quietly says what everyone is already thinking. They're testing boundaries. The watch supervisor gives a short nod and says nothing. Another radio call goes out, firmer now, but still neutral. This is a United States Navy warship conducting lawful transit. Recommend you maintain safe distance. Again, nothing comes back. The silence stretches long enough to confirm it is intentional. The sea remains calm, and that is what makes this dangerous. There is no weather to blame, no swell to excuse misjudgment. Every meter closed is chosen. CPA drops below 2 nautical miles. At this range, collision avoidance rules stop being theory. The margin for error shrinks to helm orders measured in degrees and seconds. One wrong move, one slow response, and steel meets steel. The bridge crew knows it. So do the sailors on the other ships. You can see it in the way bodies move, in the way heads turn toward the destroyer's silhouette. The 5-inch mount shifts again, only a few degrees. Not a threat, a reminder, enough to be seen. Within the Chinese formation, something changes. The lead ship hesitates. Its speed fluctuates for a moment before leveling out. The parallel ship stays locked in place, but its wake lengthens slightly, as if more power is being pushed through the engines. Pressure without commitment. That is the game. The 2 converging ships reach their tightest point yet. The geometry is now impossible to misread. This is no longer simple shadowing. This is a calculated squeeze designed to force a reaction. But no reaction comes. The American ship holds her line, calm, documented, unmoved. Every sensor stays active. Every action is logged. No one rushes, no one improvises. That restraint is not weakness. It is control. Then, almost too subtly to notice, the first crack appears. One of the Chinese warships eases off the throttle, just enough to widen the gap by a fraction. Not a retreat, not yet. But the range stops shrinking. For the first time in minutes, the numbers hold. The bridge stays silent because at sea, the moment someone thinks it is over is often the moment everything goes wrong. And this is not over. Not yet. 5:34 local time. The range holds, but the tension does not fade. Holding distance is not the same as backing off. At sea, pauses are often probes. Everyone on board understands that. The captain gives a short nod. Not permission. Confirmation. Transition posture. No escalation. The ship does not change speed. It does not alter course. What changes is awareness. Below deck, systems already running smoothly move into even sharper focus. Sensors widen their sweep. Data flow becomes faster, tighter, cleaner. Nothing flashy, nothing loud. Just more eyes and more certainty. A helicopter crew completes checks in silence. Rotor blades remain still. This is not about launch. It is about options. About quietly reminding everyone in visual range that options exist. Long-range optics keep the Chinese formation under constant watch. The feed is now clear enough to catch hand signals on open decks. Crews clustered near railings. Faces turned toward the American ship. They are watching closely. That is the point. One of the Chinese warships nudges inward again. Barely a degree, barely a knot. Enough to say, we are still here. Enough to test whether the brief pause meant weakness. It does not. The American destroyer's course line remains ruler straight. The wake behind her does not change. The message is quiet, but impossible to miss. Inside CIC, the watch team updates the log with machine-like precision. Bearing, speed, time, everything documented. Nothing interpreted. Interpretation can wait. What matters now is the record. The parallel ship edges slightly aft, falling back by a few hundred yards. Not withdrawal, recalibration. The other two keep their angles, but the squeeze begins to loosen by inches. In close encounters, inches are a language of their own. The 5-inch mount settles at a new resting angle. Still neutral, still silent, still impossible to ignore. A junior watchstander glances at the captain. The captain does not look back. His eyes remain on the water, on the math unfolding in real time. He knows something the team is only beginning to feel. The pressure is starting to work. For the first time since initial contact, one of the Chinese warships alters away by a measurable margin. 5 degrees, clean, deliberate. That is not accidental. The range opens slightly, not much but enough to register. The American ship does nothing in response. No pursuit, no follow-up move, because the goal was never to push back. It was to hold ground. In CIC, the supervisor lets out a slow breath. He does not announce anything. He knows better than to call it finished too soon. Encounters like this end only when both sides decide they are done learning. And learning goes both ways. The Chinese formation begins to stretch. The ship that had anchored the parallel track drifts farther aft, its bow wave losing the near-perfect symmetry it had held before. The two flanking ships stop angling inward and settle into safer lines. Not friendly, just safer. From the bridge, the ocean looks unchanged. Same calm surface, same low sun climbing higher. But the invisible geometry has shifted. This is the moment most people never see in the news. No alarms, no dramatic warnings, no sharp turns. Just 3 warships deciding, almost at the same time, that the test has gone as far as it should. The American destroyer continues transit exactly as planned. No effort to press advantage, no attempt to capitalize. She records and moves on. That restraint is deliberate because presence is strongest when it does not ask permission. The range opens by another half mile. Enough. The captain speaks again. Maintain posture. Continue logging. Nothing more. The helicopter stays on deck. Systems remain controlled. Voices stay calm. Out here, the absence of action can be the action. The 3 Chinese warships remain visible, but their behavior has changed. The approach softens. The angles relax. The squeeze is gone. No one says it aloud, but everyone understands what just happened. A line was drawn. Not with noise, not with speeches, but with discipline, documentation, and a ship that refused to move an inch it did not have to. For now, that is enough. For now. 5:49 local time. The numbers change first. Range opens by fractions of a mile. Not enough to relax completely, but enough to confirm that a decision has been made somewhere on the other side of intent. Speed readouts on the nearest Chinese warship dip, then stabilize. Its wake shortens. Power eases back without ceremony. No one needs to announce it. On the bridge, the officer of the deck watches the repeater and marks it once. Contact 1, reducing speed. Logged. The parallel ship that had held station for nearly half an hour slips farther aft. It no longer mirrors perfectly. The symmetry is broken. To trained eyes, the meaning is immediate. Station keeping has ended. Shadowing remains, but the pressure is draining away. The other 2 ships follow moments later. Their inward angles soften, bows easing outward by degrees that matter. The triangle opens. Space returns. This is how maritime standoffs end. Not with declarations, with geometry. The American destroyer does not react. No change in speed, no change in heading, no acknowledgement beyond continued transit. That restraint seals the outcome more clearly than any maneuver could. Inside CIC, CPA expands past the thresholds that had been highlighted only minutes earlier. No alarms sound because alarms are no longer necessary. The watch team keeps working exactly as trained, recording, timestamping, verifying. A junior analyst marks the moment when ranges stop decreasing and begin to widen. He highlights it digitally, not because it is dramatic, but because it matters. This is the pivot point. The instant the encounter stopped tightening and started to unwind, one of the Chinese warships finally transmits a brief radio call. The signal is clear, controlled, intentionally bland. No apology, no challenge. Just acknowledgement of presence and intent to continue operations nearby. The bridge receives it without comment. The captain listens, then replies with equal restraint. This is a United States Navy warship conducting lawful transit. Your maneuvers have been recorded. Maintain safe distance. Nothing more. The radio goes quiet again, but the silence feels different now. It no longer presses. It releases. The sea remains calm. Sunlight flashes off steel. To an untrained eye, it might look like almost nothing happened. 3 ships in the distance, 1 ship continuing ahead. But every person on board knows better, because the difference between what almost happened and what did happen is measured in seconds, degrees, and discipline. The distance keeps opening. 1 nautical mile, then another. The Chinese ships drift into a looser formation, no longer coordinated tightly enough to signal pressure. Their wakes separate. Their behavior settles into something closer to observation than confrontation. The American destroyer keeps moving. No visible relief. No moment of triumph. Professionalism demands neutrality even when things go your way. On deck, sailors remain at their stations longer than strictly necessary, because necessary is a luxury that belongs to later. Only when the Rangers move well beyond the danger envelope do shoulders ease, just slightly. Not celebration, just routine beginning to return. The captain walks the bridge slowly, checking each station with his eyes instead of his voice. Everything is in order. It always was. This was never a test of firepower. It was a test of control. And control held. The Chinese warships are now clearly opening distance, their headings diverging from the destroyer's track. They remain visible but no longer intrusive. The encounter resolves without a single system crossing into a fully dangerous posture. No shots, no alarms, no headlines, at least not yet. But the logs are full. The footage is complete, the timestamps are exact, and that is what matters. Because at sea, the end of an encounter is never the end of its consequences. Every maneuver will be reviewed, every second replayed, every decision weighed by people far from this quiet stretch of water. For the crew on board, the meaning is simpler. They held course. They stayed professional. They did not blink. And when the pressure finally broke, they let it break on its own. 6:10 local time. The sea begins to look ordinary again. 3 warships recede into the haze, their silhouettes shrinking until only radar confirms where they are. The American destroyer continues along her planned route. Engine steady, wake unbroken, mission unchanged. From the outside, it looks uneventful. Inside the ship, it is anything but. Down in CIC, the real work is only beginning. Radar recordings are archived. Video feeds are indexed. Every bearing change, every moment of silence on the radio, every maneuver is timestamped and preserved. Nothing is summarized yet. Nothing is interpreted. Facts come first. This is how the U.S. Navy handles encounters like this. Not as stories, but as data. Because data lasts longer than memory, and memory alone is never enough when decisions are examined later. On the bridge, the captain reviews the final entries with a glance, not a speech. The watch team slips back into routine posture without being told. There is no sense of triumph. No relief dramatic enough to name. Only professionalism settling back into place. This was never about winning. It was about holding ground without crossing a line that did not need to be crossed. The ship did not maneuver aggressively. It did not accelerate. It did not try to intimidate. It simply refused to yield space it had every right to occupy. That refusal, expressed calmly and consistently, said more than any warning ever could. The Chinese warships learned something in those minutes of closing range. So did the American crew. Encounters like this always teach both sides something. The difference lies in what each side chooses to do with the lesson. For the sailors on board, the takeaway is simple. Procedures worked. Discipline held. The chain of command stayed intact under pressure. That is not accidental. It is the result of years of repetition, training built on the assumption that the hardest day may arrive quietly, without warning, in calm seas, under a clear sky. Out here, restraint is not passive. It is active control. Every decision made during the encounter carried consequences far beyond this ship. One overreaction can echo through fleets. One miscalculation can redraw lines that take years to repair. That is why nothing dramatic happened. That is why nothing needed to. The destroyer did exactly what she was built to do: operate forward, remain lawful, and maintain presence without provocation. She showed capability by not using it. She showed resolve by not advertising it. This is the side of naval power most people never see. No dramatic footage, no explosions, no spectacle meant for audiences at home. Just quiet professionalism at the edge of risk. And that quiet is intentional. Because in the modern maritime environment, escalation rarely begins with noise. It begins with proximity, with silence on the radio, with angles tightening by degrees instead of declarations shouted into open water. What kept this encounter from becoming something else was not luck. It was restraint backed by readiness. By the time the Chinese warships were well clear, the destroyer's crew had already moved on. Watches rotated, logs were finalized. The ship pressed ahead into open water as if nothing unusual had happened. But something had. A line had been tested, and it held. Somewhere else, on another stretch of ocean, another watch team will stand another day. Another radar contact will appear, another set of numbers will begin to shrink, and the same question will hang in the air, unspoken but understood. Will this remain professional? That answer is never guaranteed. It has to be earned every time. For now, the American destroyer continues her transit, gray hull steady against blue water, carrying with her the full record of an encounter resolved not by force, but by discipline. No wasted words, no unnecessary moves. Just a reminder. Clear enough for anyone watching to understand. We will be here. We will be ready. And we will not move unless we choose to.